So maybe the best thing to start to tell something about my practice. I'm calling myself more a visual artist, and in fact, I used to be a very normal artist, I have to say. During the 90s, I've studied at the Rietveld Academy and later at the prestigious Rijksacademie in Amsterdam. On these academies, they taught me to start worrying about my career, to make that the final object of my activity. They told the students that we, artists, had to get our names known. We should become our own brands and had to look out for our own interest. We supposed to be artistic individuals, entrepreneurs during these days. Art as a space for social reflection and thought that X was removed from the central stage. The idea that art could contribute to change disappeared completely. It was the time of Tina. There is no alternative. It was the neoliberal period. The process of individualization had a great impact also on my life. We artists in the Netherlands got the must try harder and harder mentality, and more than ever we became each other's rivals. Competitions among ourselves became a normal form of contact. And the more we focused on our own individual career, the more we isolated ourselves from society. The public could no longer read the language we produced. We were shouting for the international art world, whose standards and units of measurement were obviously not anchored in our own environments. In the beginning of 2001, I moved to Argentina by chance, and I landed in the middle of a severe crisis in that country. The state was bankrupt, workers didn't receive their wages, many didn't have any form of income, and children were dying of desnutrition. The supermarkets next doors were full with goods in the same time. It was a crisis that put the whole society upside down. Because the banks were closed for a long time, it was nearly impossible to make any financial transactions. The art market suffered severe and collapsed completely. The museums in Buenos Aires had already closed their doors because of the budget shortages. During these years, I learned that there is an alternative. Workers occupied factories, citizens started to organize themselves on the squares, and for a short moment there was even a barter trade on huge scale. Also in the arts, alternatives had appeared. Poets started to make their own books and exchange them in parks for food or services. Other artists started to perform on the street, in demonstrations or in other political actions. The artists gathered in groups and connected themselves to social and political organizations. I learned in this period how to connect myself to workers, or better to say, how to listen to them. And I learned that to change the society was not a choice, but a need. Around 2005, the process of normalization had already started in Argentina. The new poverty became normal and accepted. The people I had worked with during the preceding years became so-called visual contamination, or that's how the new mayor of Buenos Aires called them. The solidarity they received during the first years of the crisis had faded away. Also that year, I returned to the Netherlands, to a country, although it had changed completely, Tina was still present. During the years that followed, I made political exhibitions in mostly progressive art institutes and museums. But more and more, I got the conviction that making shows in what Mao would call petty bourgeois locations had its limits. How did the so-called political works function in these places? For whom I was working, who is watching? Was it possible inside the Western European art institutes to create artwork that acts? I started to orientate myself towards the culture outside the institutions and try to connect myself with the unions. So now we go back a little bit in time, and when I start to talk about the unions, during the years of the birth of the unions in the Netherlands, in the end of the 19th century, there was a very strong connection between culture and politics, between artists and unions. A very clear example is the building of the first union in the Netherlands, the Burgt, you see behind. This building of the General Diamond Workers Union of the Netherlands has been designed by the well-known architect Berlage, and its walls are covered with wall paintings and mosaics. In the main space of the building, the walls have been painted by Richard Roland Holst, the socialist painter of 100 years ago. On his murals you can see images of the arising of the working class, and very important, in a readable language. If you visit the present headquarters of the union, at this moment, the contrast cannot be bigger. There is no difference between this building in the outskirts of Amsterdam with the surrounding buildings of insurance companies, employment agencies, and accountants. The look of efficiency is present on every wall inside their building. Bare brick, stone walls, false modular ceilings, and everywhere leased coffee machines. And in front of the entrance, there's an obscure abstract sculpture, a result of the 1% for Arts regulation. The connection between the arts and the union has disappeared since World War II. The movement became a company, like the insurance company next door, an enterprise with a corporate image design. The traditional working class has also changed a lot in the Netherlands during the last decades. The grandchildren of the founders of the union became part of the lower middle class and prisoners of consumerism, and it is difficult to find a revolutionary thought among them. The current working class in the Netherlands includes mainly workers with low-paid service jobs and people who are searching to have these jobs. Jobs without any certainty, and if there is something like a contract, then it is called, for example, a zero-hour contract. That means the employee agrees to be available for work as and when required, so that no particular number of hours or times of work are specified. Most of these workers have a migrant background. The other part is the leftover of the old working class. On Dutch television, you can watch endless programs where these people are made ridiculous, and their poverty has been commercialized. The new Dutch working class is not uniform, but everybody looks down on them. They have been humiliated by the populists, mocked by the liberals, and neglected by the social democrats. Since some years, I work with some of them inside the Union of Cleaners and Domestic Workers. In this union also works a graphic designer and illustrator. Till now, this collaboration between some artist and a union is unique in the world of the Dutch Union. So I can tell you a little bit why we are working there. Around 2006, the number of members of the Union of Cleaners declined dramatically. Old members stopped working and new cleaners didn't want to become a member. So during a visit to the Service Employers International Union in the USA, the union administrators of the FNV Bondgenoten got in touch with the method of organizing. Organizing is a way of, let's say, organizing the union from below. You don't wait inside your office for new members, but you visit workers on their workplace. Back in the Netherlands, the union administrators started with organizing. They visited train stations, offices, hospitals, looking for the so-called natural leaders, workers who are well respected by their colleagues. The Union of the Cleaners grew quick, very quick, but very soon came to light, and now it starts to be, for me, really interesting, came to light the problem that the new Dutch working class doesn't have an identity, doesn't have a culture. And without your own identity, you don't exist. So in the following years, new symbols like the yellow fist and the flags were designed to give the workers their own identity. In 2010, the Union of Cleaners and Domestic Workers, they asked me to create and work for the anniversary of their first strike. And some of you can remember the first strike, especially if you live in Utrecht or work in Utrecht. The train station was a bit messy during that period. The strike lasted more than 3 months, and it was the longest strike in the Netherlands since the 30s. During these weeks, cleaners and their labor conditions became for the first time visible. They demanded a better collective agreement, but above all, more respect. The slogan of the strike was, "Never ever visible." Never ever invisible. It's a big difference. The goal of the anniversary was to activate the organization of the union, to bring together the workers who haven't seen each other for 1 year, and to celebrate the achievements of the strike. Also, to show the obtained pride to the public of the central station of Utrecht was very important. So the question is, how do you make an artwork for such an event? Now I go back again to Mao, and he says in the text of the Yenan Forum, our writers and artists have their work to do, but their primary task is to understand people and know them well. I have read this text of Mao just some weeks ago. For me, it was quite interesting, especially the first part I really liked. But when we go back again to 2010, the first thing what I did was completely following Mao in a way, and it was visiting the main groups of the organized cleaners in the Netherlands and to listen to their stories. Stories of their labor conditions, their contracts, but also simple stories of having fear to grab into a dirty needle when you clean a dustbin of a train. These stories were connected with objects collected by cleaners during their work. The objects were installed together with stories on a huge wall of yellow cleaning cloths and put in the middle of the central station here in Utrecht. During the day of the anniversary, a huge group of cleaners came to inaugurate this artwork, their museum, the so-called Schoonmaakmuseum. During 3 days, the museum was in the central hall of the station on exactly the same spot where the cleaners hold their occupations a year earlier. After this presentation, the museum has been used during the occupations by cleaners of universities here in Utrecht and Amsterdam. So it's not anymore that in the Netherlands the students occupy the museum, the universities, but the cleaners, they occupy the universities nowadays. And the students, they were complaining because they say, I cannot study, I paid for that. After these events, we broke down a museum and we made flags out of yellow fabric. Now I'm going to tell something about one part of the union, and I think many of you, they know the group quite well, and we call them the domestic workers. The group of domestic workers are part of the union of the cleaners, and although their situation is very different from the other cleaners, their work is not accepted yet as normal work in this country, and this is the case for domestic workers without, but also for the ones with a legal status. During the last years, we have made together several works for our campaign. And I will point now on 2 of them, and that are the 2 shadow plays. The shadow play is a theater form originally from Asia that is also common here in the Netherlands because of our colonial history. The technique makes it possible for the undocumented domestic workers to perform. The first shadow play, I don't ask anything about you, you don't ask anything about me, was made for an art exhibition here in Utrecht for Casco. There was not that much time to create the video, and the working structure was that of domestic workers who were participating in a video written by non-domestic workers. This is a very common way of working inside the art world, I have to say. Anyway, for most of the domestic workers, it was a very positive experience, and they asked me to continue with developing theater plays. And that was for us the moment to evaluate in order to improve our practice. The second one, the second shadow play, No Work, No Pay, has been made as part of the campaign of the Union for the ratification of the ILO Convention 189, a convention. This is the International Labour Organization, the ILO means. It's the convention that simply says domestic work is real work and please treat it like that. Till now, this is not the case in the Netherlands, and the Dutch government doesn't want to ratify the convention. And I have to say yet, because we are going to change that. During the whole process of making the video, the domestic workers were involved at the creation of the script, in the rehearsals, for the recordings, and during the editing. The first place where this video has been shown was the Dutch Parliament, during hearing about domestic work in the Netherlands. Actually, the result is different from the first shadow play. The fact that these two videos has been made for a different public had a great influence on the story and form, but also the difference between participation and collaboration has been crucial. The first shadow play is a video about domestic workers. The second one is a video by domestic workers. This means the authorship became collective. And for me, this is a very crucial element. At last, I will show some slides of an action that took place during the last strike of the cleaners in 2012. And during this strike, there was a labor conflict between, on one side, the Court of Justice here in Utrecht, the small cleaning company that cleaned the court, and on the other side, the Union of Cleaners. In order to get focus of this, focus of this conflict by the local press, the union organized an action. The cleaners mirrored the practice inside the court and organized a trial in front of the court. The Union of the Cleaners was the prosecutor, the Justice of Utrecht and the small cleaning company were the accused. The judge was the member of the government of the cleaners from Utrecht, Abdel Kourit. The main fact that emerged during the trial was the responsibility of the outsourcing company for the labor conditionings of their cleaners. And in this case, it was the Court of Justice of Utrecht.